You know, for millions of people, Linkin Park's Numb was the sound of their youth. It's a song we all screamed along to in our cars, in our bedrooms. But today, we're going to peel back the layers and look at it as something more than just a rock anthem. We're going to treat it like a profound psychological document. This line, this is the absolute core of it all. And it's so much more than just teenage angst. It's a real clinical state. It's a defense mechanism. And honestly, it's the key to unlocking the entire story of this song. So what does it actually mean to become numb? And get this isn't some niche feeling we're talking about. The song has over 2 billion views on YouTube. Just on YouTube. That's not just a hit song, that's a global phenomenon. It tells you right away that this feeling of pressure, of being unheard, of just shutting down, it resonates on a massive, generational scale. What if this song isn't just about a rebellious kid and a strict parent? What if it's actually mapping out a cycle of trauma that gets passed down from one generation to the next? Let's find out. To really understand the song's power, we have to start at its source. You see, this wasn't just some clever songwriting. It was a raw, authentic cry for help, rooted in very real pain. The life of Chester Bennington, it was pretty much defined by what psychologists call adverse childhood experiences, or ACEs. After his parents divorced, he faced abandonment and then endured this long, horrific period of abuse. That raw pain is exactly what you hear in his voice. It's not a performance, it's a testimony. And what's really incredible is how directly we can map his life right onto the lyrics. The abandonment he felt, that translates into feeling so faithless. The trauma from the abuse, that leads directly to emotional dissociation or becoming numb. And that feeling of social isolation, it's perfectly captured by the pressure of walking in your shoes. The song is literally a biography of his pain. Okay, let's get into the mechanics of all this pressure. What exactly is going on psychologically when someone feels so lost under the surface? Well, humanistic psychology actually gives us a brilliant way to understand it. It all comes down to this idea from Carl Rogers called conditions of worth. It's that little voice in your head that says, I will only love you if you get good grades, or I'll only be proud of you if you become a lawyer. It means love isn't given freely. It has to be earned by fitting into someone else's plan for you. And this lyric right here is the soul of the song. This is a direct rebellion against those conditions of worth. It's the real, authentic self trying desperately to break free from the mask it's been forced to wear just to feel loved and accepted. And this just illustrates that internal war perfectly. On one side, you have the parent's ideal, perfect version of you. And on the other, you have who you really are. That gap between the two is what Rogers called incongruence. And the wider that gap gets, the more lost, the more anxious, and the more faithless you start to feel. But where does this intense pressure even come from? Well, according to Jungian psychology, it's often something called the unlived life of the parent. They aren't just pushing their kid to succeed. No, they're pushing their child to go back and fix their own past failures, to fulfill their own unrealized dreams. Okay, but this is where the story takes a really dramatic turn, because the song starts to point a finger at a new culprit, and it reframes the entire conflict. This is the moment the song goes from being a personal complaint to a full-blown systemic analysis. What if the person causing all this pain isn't actually the true source of the problem? This line right here is the psychological linchpin of the entire track. With this one single line, the whole song pivots. The narrator suddenly sees their parent not as some all-powerful monster, but as a former victim of the exact same cycle. They see their own reflection in their parents' past. And here we can see exactly how that cycle works. Disappointment gets passed down like a twisted family heirloom. The parent projects their own feelings of failure onto the child. So every step I take is another mistake to you, And you can see this play out so clearly in the music video with the mother's constant, unregulated anger. So let's put a name to this. This psychological maneuver is called projective identification, and it is incredibly insidious. Basically, a parent takes their own unbearable feeling, like shame or failure, and they unconsciously force their child to carry it for them. They treat the child like a failure until the child has no choice but to believe it's true. So what does all this constant pressure actually do to a person's brain? How does someone become numb? Well, there's a real neurobiological process going on here. It's kind of like the brain's last-ditch effort to protect itself. And we actually have data on this. Research shows a really strong link between what's called self-alienation, that feeling of being a stranger to yourself, and emotional numbness. Basically, the more you're forced to be someone you're not, the more your brain just disconnects from feeling anything at all. And clinically, this numbness shows up in real, observable ways. You lose interest in things you used to love. Your speech might become kind of flat, you pull away from your friends, and you get this deep, pervasive feeling of being an alien disguised as a human. It's a profound disconnection from yourself and the entire world. But the story does not have to end there. The song itself gives us the clue. You know, recognizing the cycle is the very first step to breaking it. So, how do you reclaim your own identity after it's been pushed down for so long? Well, therapists talk about a process called reparenting the self. It starts with just recognizing the manipulation for what it is. Then you set internal boundaries, which means understanding their criticism is about their trauma, not your worth. From there, you can start setting external boundaries, like actually saying no. And finally, you begin making choices that are truly, authentically your own. And this really gets to the heart of healing. It often begins with a kind of grieving. You have to let go of the hope that your parent will one day magically change and become the person you always needed them to be. Accepting the tough reality of who they are is what finally sets you free to become who you are. And that brings us right back to the song's ultimate triumphant declaration. This isn't just about teenage rebellion. This is the goal of individuation. It's the sound of a person finally choosing their own path and their own self, free from the crushing weight of someone else's expectations. And that leaves us with one final, very powerful question. The song shows us exactly how this pain is inherited, how it's passed down. So the question it forces us to ask is, for those of us who see ourselves in this story, are we going to be the ones who pass it on, or are we going to be the end of the line?